I like punctual. I like you all punctual people.
And speaking of punctual, it is exactly 6:30. So I will go ahead, Representative, if that's all right with you.
Great.
So thank you all again for being here. This is going to be a pretty casual conversation, but we do like to start our events with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we occupy as residents is unceded Indigenous land. The Tri-County area rests on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Malala, and many other tribes who have made their homes along the Columbia River, creating both permanent communities and seasonal encampments. There are many other tribes and nations who lived in the region that are not collectively remembered, so we want to take this moment to remember their contributions to shaping our state and our country. So with that, I will pass it back over to Representative Reynolds for some updates, and then we will get to all of you.
Great. Thank you all for being here. My name is Lisa Reynolds. I go by she, her, and I am the state representative for Oregon House District 36, which covers much of Portland's west side. We're calling tonight office hours because we are going to definitely keep it casual. I'm going to talk less than usual, but there are a few things I just would like to bring to mind. I've been tracking some of the ballot measures that have been passed by voters. One, the Metro measure on funding our houseless issue, and the other a ballot measure passed in 2020. They were both passed in 2020. The Metro issue is spring of 2020, and in fall of 2020, the voters of the entire state of Oregon passed Measure 110, which decriminalizes possession of small amounts of drugs, even heroin, even methamphetamine, even certain type of opioids. The amount that would be considered something just for personal use, so not something you're selling. And in turn, we are driving more money into our treatment center, our treatment system for substance use disorder. And so I just want to give some updates on how these two measures are going. There's certainly, we know in especially the Portland area, but really all across the state, the houseless issue is a serious crisis, and it's only getting worse in front of our eyes. And people appropriately say, myself included, how could we be spending more and more money on this and seeing fewer and fewer results? And so I will say I was a little bit heartened by an article in the Oregonian this past weekend, really analyzing specifically the funding that's being raised by the tax that metro area voters, metro area means Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas County, that voters voted in to tax the most wealthy of us in order to fund wraparound services for our houseless neighbors. And the good news is that we are meeting the goals of that particular measure, okay? And that may be a very specific way to define success. I don't think we can really define this as success. Come on, we have more and more people living in squalor, living in a public health, emergency. But I will say that some of the intentions for that money are being met. And specifically, if we look at the period of time, the second half of 2021, the money that was raised by the Metro measure and maybe some other county money added into that shows that 500 people moved out of shelters or sidewalks into apartments. And 1,500 additional people were helped with rent relief using federal, state, and local funds. The money from this measure helped keep 1,400 people who were facing eviction housed through rent payments and rent relief. And this measure so far has created close to 500 year-round shelter beds. Now, this is talking about the second half of 2021. The money started coming in the middle of 2021, so this is the second half. The good news is that there's quite a bit more money coming online in 2022. And I will say we don't have the statistics back yet on that. However, we are seeing that we are on track to meet the goals of that ballot measure, which includes placing 2,400 people in permanent housing and creating 700 new shelter beds and preventing 1,000 people from becoming houseless. Okay, so So that's just a brief overview. I will make sure on our follow-up, we will send out the Oregonian piece. But all I want to say is we have a problem. We're scratching the surface with some of these numbers, but I think at the very least, we need to acknowledge that what was promised in the Metro measure is being delivered upon. And I think one thing that's very challenging and probably the more important question to ask is, how many houseless people do we have currently? We still don't know that answer. And if you listen to Sharon Myron, if you listen to me, if you listen to Dan Ryan, it is important to know these metrics, and we just don't. There is a point in time count of those who are living on our sidewalks back in January, February, I can't even remember. Those numbers are still being analyzed. But I do think we need metrics, both of what the scope of the problem is now, what the goals are every month for who we're going to get off the sidewalks. And then we need to track those metrics, and we need to show the public what we're doing. So this Oregonian piece was a very small first step on that, but I am feeling that at least what was promised is being delivered upon. The other ballot measure is not really being delivered upon. So Measure 110 decriminalizes possession of small amounts of drugs, regardless of what the drug is. So heroin is treated the same way as, ADHD meds, although it's not illegal to have that. I mean, that wasn't a great example. What we're finding with that is we made this decriminalization of the drugs before we had a treatment center in place. The goal was, let's not fill our prisons with people who have a substance use disorder. Let's get them into treatment. However, we don't have the treatment leg of the stool yet. If you think of a three-legged stool, I don't know what the third leg is. This model, this ballot measure was modeled after a very similar measure in Portugal, where they had a better treatment a better treatment system in place, and they saw drug deaths plummet after they decriminalized small amounts of drugs. As we all know here, our drug overdose deaths have not plummeted. In fact, they've soared. They've soared higher than the national average, and they're going up, 30, 40% year over year. These are drug overdose deaths in people's homes, in people's tents, and we need to do something about it. I will say, in meeting with people who are involved in implementing Measure 110, I will tell you, I feel strongly that the resources are there. The state has put in resources. We've diverted resources that were marijuana tax dollars. It takes time. And I'm not making an excuse. It's taking way too much time. But, we are asking people who've been doing this work for a while to expand their services. We've been asking people who've never done this work to stand up a new facility. We're placing very strong emphasis on community-based programs that employ and treat people in a culturally competent way. So it's hard to do this, and shame on us for having such a deep hole that we have to fill, that we've been so inadequate in our treatment service for substance use disorder that, every month without building up, a program that has nothing means that lives are being lost. So what I will say with this is the process is moving forward. It's moving more slowly than any of us want. The Oregon Health Authority has recently, and by their own admission, too late, put over 100 staff members on this process to read the proposals of folks who want to provide services, so that we can fund them with the grant money through the dollars from both the marijuana tax revenue, as well as more monies sent by the state. That's an overview of what's a very complicated issue. But I share what, our frustration that I'm sure you all share, especially as we read about unprecedented opioid deaths. The one last thing, these are all really tough problems, right? And I'm not minimizing them, and I'm not shirking from them. But the last thing I thought I should address is gun violence prevention. And Cheryl actually emailed me last week, kind of, what can we do? The number, we're on pace now. We broke the record in 2020 in Portland for gun homicides. We're on pace now to break that record in 2022, including 4 people in Oregon House District 36 were shot and killed in a 1-week period about 2 weeks ago, including that really beautiful 19-year-old student from Portland State who's a former foster youth. Including a homeless person who had an addiction problem and was probably killed. My understanding is that might have had something to do with drug use or drug exchange. And then 2 other people who, when I last looked, had not been named. So I will say, because I feel like our society is now awash in guns, we have guns everywhere. I will tell you, sometimes it feels hard to know how we're going to policy our way out of this. And so what we look towards are policies that can make a difference. So ghost guns are increasingly becoming the type of weapon used in crimes and in homicides. So ghost guns are often printed, in our 3D plastic printers. They are untraceable because they are just printed at home, so they don't have a serial number. They're untraceable, and they're also undetectable if you're walking through a metal detector. So the federal government has made some changes in order to make the consequences of using ghost guns more serious for people who do that. And we are hoping to shore that up even further at the state level. And I'm working with the Attorney General, Ellen Rosenblum, and Senator James Manning on that issue. And the fact that people can get these guns without passing a background check. The other thing, as you all know, I've been talking about for the past 6 months is that upstream, what can we do to dissuade or persuade people from ever engaging in gun violence to begin with? I think that's where the true solution is here. Actually, I would say the real solution is that, people should have to earn a license before they purchase or carry a gun. That is a pipe dream. We are going to chip away at that, and we are not going to give up on that, but that's a long ways away and politically very challenging to do. But in the meantime, we're looking at ghost guns. We're looking at more upstream services for community-based violence intervention programs, including the hospital-based programs you've heard me talk about, and even just the idea that a greener neighborhood or the greening of a neighborhood lowers the gun violence in that neighborhood. Employing people who have traditionally turned to gun violence lowers gun violence in that neighborhood. Taking on gang leaders and giving them true community leadership and mentorship and training and jobs lowers gun violence in those neighborhoods. So those are the things that we are looking at. But as I told Cheryl when we talked, I'm open to any suggestions, thoughts, or ideas you all have on these very pressing problems of our day. So that was really what I wanted to open with. 3 things I've been thinking about a lot. Maida and Christopher and I have been working on a lot of different legislative concepts that we can get into now or later, or we can certainly update you as the year progresses. But now I want to open the door to you all and let me know if you have questions, concerns. We're happy to unmute you. You can put things in the chat. Thank you all for being here tonight. Cheryl writes that a recent Oregonian article said that Oregon does not have a definition of domestic terrorism, so that there are no measures to combat it. Can the legislature come up with a definition and move us forward? Thank you for that question, Cheryl. Oh, here's Judy. Thank you for that question, Cheryl. I will admit this is something I don't know much about. I did retweet the fine Representative Dacia Graber, who does know a lot about this work. So wait, Judy, are you home? Are you, okay, oh, she's muted, sorry. Interrupting to get an update from Judy and her grandson. Okay, you can unmute Judy. Oh,
there he is.
Hi, Luca. Hi, Erica. This is 3 generations. Judy, Erica, and Luca
I'll see it too.
Coming to us live from, and Paul, of course, the proud grandfather, coming to you live from Seattle. Thank you for joining. Good to see you. How's it going, Erica? He is getting big.
Yeah, we're heading towards 11 pounds quite quickly.
You're gonna need like one of those, those belts that the people wear when they're lifting.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's got one like that.
Yeah, thankfully the carrier that friends gave me has good lumbar support. I'm gonna need it.
Yes, you need a whole like a
Yeah, but you're not wrong. No, he's huge.
That's great. That's great. That's exciting. Okay, great. But I will getting back to the question. So Cheryl, that's something that I will certainly, that I can imagine Representative Graybird leading on. We're very worried about domestic terrorism, and we've had domestic terrorism here, right? In December of 2020, we had people attack our state capitol, and it will happen again. So if there are statutes that need us, that we need to enable to prosecute those trespassers more readily, we will certainly be looking into it. Kathy Moyd.
Hi.
Hi there.
I was just wondering whether any of the bills that you supported that didn't pass, that you're planning on reintroducing, in particular the compassionate release that really was treated ridiculously.
Yeah, so I worked with Senator Dembro. My office worked real hard with Senator Dembro's office and with a lot of great advocates and agency folks to come up with what was a really rational and authentic process where adults in custody could apply for compassionate medical release. And it really just died a undramatic death in the short session. We do plan to bring it back in the long session, and it'll be, well, Senator Dembro has a full long and short session, and I know he's really would like to get this done before he retires from the legislature. We are bringing it back. I haven't yet had discussion with leadership to know what it means and what the future of this bill holds. But thank you for asking that.
I didn't think it was that undramatic with the opposition saying you're letting all these criminals out on the street that commit more crimes.
Yeah. It sure helped that shortly after that, they showed that the sentences that Governor Brown commuted in order to allow people to leave incarceration because of their risk of severe disease or complications from COVID, to show that those people didn't have, a different rate of reoffending than other people did was good. Like, these are not, you're not going to be flooding our system with dangerous criminals. In fact, a lot of those people who had their sentences commute went on to do better than average. So yeah. Great. Other questions, folks?
And sorry, Representative, I think Kathy may have had a follow-up and I unmuted her.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Kathy. Hold on. You have to unmute again, Kathy. Here,
Okay.
Kathy. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. I just wonder if there were any other bills that you, from last session, that you were working on for next session also.
So one, a bill I've been working on, as Judy knows, probably for 7 or 8 years, is closing the Charleston loophole. So we are looking to combine. So that means that we really need to require that a background check is complete before a gun is released to a prospective purchaser. Right now, if that background check isn't complete after 3 days, the seller can release it. So I am looking to combine that with the ghost guns bill, with the theme being these are both ways that people circumvent the background check system. So there's that. We are looking to, the other, the voting rights restoration for adults in custody. I'm not sure where that's going to go in 2023, to be honest, but that is something I worked on in 2022. Other things, and a cousin to the bill that we were able to get funded. We funded a gender response coordinator for women who are in custody. They have women who are incarcerated have fewer programs, fewer supports than men who are incarcerated. It's kind of hard to believe. They tend to be there for very different reasons than men are. Not to demonize men, I would say we all need to do better for our adults in custody. But an outgrowth of that is looking at women who give birth when they are in custody. We know that these women, once they leave the prison system, they become the primary caregiver for those babies. They resume being a primary caregiver to the people they were parents to before they went to jail or prison. And so are there some programs or ways that we can enhance time together, the relationship together while women are in custody? So that's a little bit of an outgrowth of what we did in 2022, looking at ways to, to really help these families be successful, because we know that these kids are going to be back in custody with those moms. What can we do during that time when women are incarcerated to make those relationships successful? But other things, I mean, there were a lot of other things I was interested. I mean, I was interested in the lawmaker pay. I was interested in campaign finance reform. I was interested in truly doing something about the public defender system, which yesterday, House Speaker Dan Rayfield announced a committee made up of Paul Evans and Floyd Przansky, Senator Przansky, who are really going to look at true long-term sustainable solutions for Oregon's incredibly fractured and inadequate public defender system. So some of those things are moving forward. I haven't heard where we're going to go with campaign finance reform, but we're all starting to kind of talk about, of course, what do we see for 2023? What are our broad goals? We all know that we have to look at where we're on the houseless issue, on gun violence prevention, on climate, public defender, hopefully campaign finance reform. But there's a lot to get done. And I think the interesting thing, and I've talked to former Majority Leader Barbara Smith Warner about this, is we have put buckets and buckets and buckets of money into various programs, including workforce development. How are we really making sure these things are happening, that we're seeing the results we want to see? And the legislature absolutely needs to be a branch of the government that is holding the other branches accountable. So looking at how we do that effectively, it really helps to bake things in as you're programming, as you're writing rules, as opposed to like everything being retrospective, which is, I think, how government kind of does things, which isn't very effective. But how do we build things in going forward with, what in the business world we call key performance indicators or metrics, or, monthly goals of, as I said earlier, how many people are we getting from the sidewalk into permanent housing? We need to have dials and tickers and all of that showing how we're doing on those things. Great. Anything else? And I'm fine with making this a short evening tonight. I could talk more, but I'm not sure people are that interested in that. And I'm happy to see, Judy has a question. Hold on, let me ask you to unmute.
It actually would be helpful to end by 7, because Third Rail Theater is doing a special presentation on 10 short plays written by kids about gun violence. And they're using the Sawbox panels as a backdrop, so you can get a free live stream. Third Rail Theater.
Thank you, Judy. I'm going to write that down. I know you wrote that, you posted something about buying tickets to Third Rail Theater. I'm like, she's not going to the theater, but I should have known. It's virtual, just because I know Judy's very careful, and Judy's in Seattle. Two things. Metric, what is Oregon's financial situation? That's what Colin asked. So we get these quarterly economic updates, economic forecasts, and certainly at our last one in March, everything was coming up roses. And so we'll see how things look at our next economic forecast in June. But I wouldn't, we've had everything coming up roses in Oregon in terms of if we're just talking about economics in terms of record revenue coming into the state government, including things that will trigger the kicker. And then being able to spend some of that money for, these long neglected services in behavioral health care and childcare and in substance use, including substance use disorders. So far, so good. And then I see. Yeah, we need to kick out the kicker. Larry, my understanding is my understanding is that landlords who were doing the rent forgiveness, they first of all, they received a lot of direct payments from the state. It may not have been enough to cover all the rent. I don't know the details of that. But if renters skipped out, leaving the landlord holding months or years of rent owed and unable to file for back rent, I don't really think that's something that's permissible, especially since we haven't withheld money from landlords for 2 years. Landlords have been getting some compensation from the time that we had an eviction moratorium till the time when that eviction moratorium lapsed. We are not leaving landlords completely holding the bag. That's not to say there aren't some situations where people are disingenuous and try to cheat the system, but certainly if any of my constituents are running into an issue such as Larry is describing, please reach out to my office. Thank you, Colin. Great. I'm happy to hang on for a few more minutes, but I'm also happy. It actually looks nice outside. I'm happy to go watch Third Rail for a little bit. But I'm really grateful that you all spent some time here this evening. We're always available. And we're always available, and I'm happy to meet with any of you one-on-one. We've been doing some in-person meetings. It's amazing how much time you spend driving, parking, ordering the coffee that I've come to realize. And then at one point the coffee shop was closed. And then it's like, I'm starting to see the value of virtual visits. Thank you, everyone. Kathy. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Larry. Yeah.
Okay, I found, speaking of the kicker, I found there's an interesting little quirk with it. The kicker is based on 2 years of tax revenues for a biennium, but they only give out the kicker every other year. And for various reasons, I had no tax liability last year, and I have a huge tax liability this year, and I'm not going to get any benefit from the kicker.
Yeah.
Because it's based on last year's.
Weird. Yeah.
Only on last year. So taxpayers only get 1 year with for money that's over 2 years.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. No, there's a little bit of a luck of the draw there for sure.
Yeah. I mean, in addition to being a ridiculous thing to be doing in the first place, but
yeah,
at least they could do it every year, and based on your 2 years of income.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I dropped my phone and then I thought I heard something. Okay, well, great. So nice to see you all. Thank you, Cheryl and David. Cheryl, we get out and we can go to the other. Cheryl and I actually have a campaign meeting at 7, which we would have missed. No, and Cheryl, don't feel you have to go.
Yeah, and I get to go. I get to watch the World Oregon is having Soledad O'Brien doing a lecture starting at 7:30.
Oh, fun.
Virtual.
Well, thank you all. I really appreciate you being here, and stay in touch.